Good morning and welcome to the 5th Business Development Club of 2022. Can't believe we're in June already. If you don't already know me, I am Paddy Woods. I'm just going to close my door. And the director of Pimento Fuse, and I also head up the marketing and new business for Pimento itself. For those who haven't been on previous calls, please use the chat box to ask questions, and we'll be recording today's event as well, which we'll share later this week. So today's session is all about the need to balance marketing, hard data and technology with building deeper, more personal, prospective client relationships. And this is all to help make your new business more successful. This area is probably one of the most critical aspects of new business, but it's often missed, and agencies actually start to build relationships at the pitch stage, which is too late. So to build a relationship that can turn into a sale, you need to strike that tricky balance between being present in your prospect's mind, but without annoying them. And that is easier said than done. So today is all about exploring this in more detail and looking at how we can nurture and gain more, gain these personal relationships and have more effective new business opportunities. To help with this, I am joined by Keith Smith, who is the Managing Director of The Advertist, and Scott Millwood, who is the Managing Director of War Agency. So Keith started out in the 1980s as part of the original team of PR Week, and fell in love with agency life, both advertising and PR, especially in the role of pitching and winning business. He ran sales and new business teams in-house and agency side in the early 2000s. Sorry, Keith. I don't go back that far.
I'm older than I am.
Sorry, working with heavily funded .com startups and award-winning design, creative and brand agencies. In 2014, he launched The Advertist to cost-effectively help agencies find their next new client, using a powerful database of contact data, news, insight, and research. The service is used by new business developers in the industry, and it has become a great resource for the agency new business landscape. Hobbies include life prepping, business prepping, frugal living, working for the good of the environment, a proud co-founder of the Stream Aid movement, cooking, and vegetarianism. Scott is a creative marketer with over 10 years experience living and breathing social media. Whilst completing a degree from the top UK business school, Scott founded a fast fashion e-commerce business before moving on to social media consulting across FMCG, insurance, and financial services. Most recently, Scott headed up marketing for MB Group, a group of leading recruitment RPO businesses gaining notoriety in the recruitment marketing space with his creative recruitment lead content. Scott founded War Agency out of his desire to help more people apply the branding and marketing principles he has applied throughout his career. Scott's focus is all about supporting individuals and businesses to grow their organic visibility on LinkedIn, to build relationships and grow revenue. So Keith, Scott, it is great to have you here. I've been looking forward to this.
Thank you very much, Paddy. Good to see you. And thank you very much, everybody, for taking time out of your day.
Exactly. And especially a nice hot day as well. So I'm going to start with you, Scott. So it's all about sort of this nurturing journey. And where do you actually really look to start on this nurturing journey? And that the approach agencies should be doing to create that awareness to the clients that they want, but don't actually know you?
Yeah, so when clients approach me to talk about personal business branding, whatever it might be, one of the first questions I ask them is, who do you want to work with? Give me 5 individuals, 10 individuals, 5 businesses, whatever, right? And most businesses, well, this sort of business, that sort of business, this is where we're strong, whatever. But normally they can't give me 5 names, can't give me 10 names, like they're really struggling. I said, well, if you don't know who your prospective clients are, how can you expect me to brand you in a way which is going to get you closer to building relationships with people that you want to work with? So one of the first things is that we get really clear on who those people are. So I started War Agency out of the desire to use branding and content as a way to build relationships over the long term, which deliver, 3, 6, 9, 12 months down the line, big ticket clients. So I was working in the recruitment industry where average contract value might be between £300,000 and £500,000. So for me, that was a 6-9 month relationship build with maybe 15 people, and 3 of those people a year said yes to me. And then suddenly I've had a great year. So what we do is apply the relationship principles and the content principles to 15, 20 people a year. And we constantly evaluate this month to month and see where we're at. Oh, I've built 5 good relationships. Well, these 5 good relationships, how close are they to becoming a client? Well, they're not close yet. Okay, well, we'll do these things to move them closer. I think things like what Keith does with the CRM systems and databases and stuff like that, that would be a useful thing to plug in at the front of my process, because people will have better clarity, they have better data and a better focus before they start. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Brilliant. Keith, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, no, I mean, I think Scott's absolutely right. I mean, you've got to know who you're going for, and you've got to shape your approach accordingly. I mean, I think the whole point of this webinar is that we're doing one-to-one versus one-to-many, and I think when we're talking about one-to-one, you have to know who the other one is.
Brilliant. And there's a quick question already in the chat, actually, from Julia. So Scott, back to you. Are these 15 to 20 names totally cold?
Yes. So funnels down, right? So I use like a traffic light system, easiest way to explain it. So red is here's 10, 15, 20 names of people that I want to work with, right? No relationship, don't know them, just I would like to work with them, right? Amber would be there's an awareness of who I am. They know who I am through my content, through whatever you've done, whatever it can be. So amber is like awareness. Green is awareness plus the right client, plus there's some kind of relationship. There's maybe some trust or rapport on a personal level, but maybe you haven't broached, working together the sort of new biz sort of direction. But my rationale is that it's a lot easier to close business with people that are aware of you and trust you and sort of get you as a person or as a business. At that point, you can then do your business development things. So I step away from my client's process once they actually say, Scott, what does VAR do? My job's done at this point. Now it's you, now it's your process, whatever. I get more people in that hopper and move from, I'd like to work with them, to inquiry, or for you to reach out to them and then have a relationship with you at that point. But it's finding the balance. It might take 3 months or it might take 12 months to build a level of trust and respect. And I would say that the higher the value of the contract, if it's a 3-month placement for a job, you might be able to do that quite quickly. If it's a £1 million contract, it's probably going to take you a year. So that's how I rationalize it.
And brilliant. And just bring that on, when you're businesses, often clients have multiple stakeholders. How do you go about sort of working on that organizational level, at the targeting brands and then targeting individuals? It's a question from Chris in the chat as well.
So as I mentioned, I do personal business branding. So this is like LinkedIn company pages, and then obviously personal brands. I see LinkedIn company pages as like positioning pages. So if you've got your personal page here, a LinkedIn business page here, and then you've got your website, people flow through from here. So there's the highest level of traffic, and then you're sort of qualifying as you go through, and then the person that fills in your inquiry form, your site, is sort of gone through that whole process properly. I think that when targeting bigger companies, you probably need to pick out multiple stakeholders in the decision-making process. So it might be a few people that are the decision-making process level. Maybe you have to go a few rungs below that to sort of understand the lay of the land and be a bit cute with it. I think as the business it's bigger, you have to start lower down the chain in order to go up. Obviously, we want to build. What I've noticed through LinkedIn is a lot of decision makers and the people running businesses aren't on LinkedIn. They're not active. They're not creating content because they're too busy running their businesses, right? So you need to get referrals up the chain from people lower down in order to move yourself up. I think if you are already on the level of other business leaders, you can sort of jump that process. So all of my clients are C-suite founders, non-exec directors, those sort of people. So they can often jump that process and go direct to the person they want to speak to. However, if you're sort of prospecting and you sort of have to follow due process, I would say.
Brilliant, thank you. And Keith, so moving on, so Scott talked about the CRM side of things and plugging that in at the beginning, and yeah. How do you, and what sort of relationship should agencies be looking to build, and how can they use those CRM tools to help build those relationships?
Okay, well, I mean, I think, the interesting thing here, and I mean, Scott's absolutely right. There has to be, you have to have an order to your process. Now, I'm not a huge advocate of CRM systems, because I think sometimes they can lull you into a false sense of security. Because I mean, effectively, what we're talking about here is the art of building relationships. And I mean, what Scott does, what I do, is facilitate those sorts of things. So it makes it easy, because it's never easy to approach somebody cold, or to go in sort of without any prior knowledge or without an introduction. So the best thing you can do is give people the most information that they can use in order to make a good case study. But and I mean, it varies from company to company, from person to person. You've got different staff resources, where the economy is, how much time you've got, it all varies. So let's all start with the basic concept that every business needs new business. Okay. And so where we go from there is you then apply a simple set of guidelines to it. So I mean, it's stuff that I talk about on our podcast, Fuel Podcast, because we interview agency CEOs and leaders about, sort of how they do the new business process. And time again, it comes back to relationships. Relationships win business. So what Scott was saying, and that the question about working on an organizational level, is it you're building relationships all the time. So, people are selling you, people are doing your job for you in the organization, and that's because they want to work with you. You've got to create the circumstances that these your prospects actually want to work with you. So it all takes time, and you've got to invest time in doing it, and so that in itself is a discipline. And so I've had clients that have been prospects for years, absolutely years. And then, all of a sudden they then become a client, because you've got the relationship there. So I think the important thing is to keep building relationships with people. And then how you do that is, obviously, the next response to that is sort of, well, I haven't got the time to do it. So this means you have to simplify the process. And that's the kind of the way that we work.
Brilliant. Thank you. Scott, do you have anything to add as well?
I think it's just, prospecting and networking is giving more value than you ask for in return. And I think one of the things that people really struggle with when doing business development is that, they send a message to someone on LinkedIn, they send a cold email, whatever, and they ask permission to help someone. Hi, I do whatever. Can I have 10 minutes of your time and I'll help you do this? So they've sent a message saying, can I help you, right? So you're asking for someone's time initially, and then they know that you're then going to ask for their money. Why not just help them? Just help them. Help them, give them value. I used to do some recruitment where I would see people that were struggling to fill jobs. My goal is to win a big recruitment contract. So I would do some research, pull a little report together and say, I know you're trying to hire these jobs. You're having these problems for these reasons. Here's a report which will help you. Hope this helps. Now, everyone who is polite will come back and say, thanks a lot. Maybe in 6 months, they might come back and ask me a sensible question based on the influence that I've given them. Some people might just come back and say, I've no idea what I'm doing, Scott. Can you help me with this? Okay, I don't know what to do, but my colleague does, right? And I think that's what people do incorrectly, is they ask permission to help rather than help. Yeah. And people say, I don't have time. Some of my clients say, I haven't got time to comment. I'm too busy. I'm like, well, they're too busy to care about you then, aren't they? Because you're saying that your time's more valuable than helping them, which is, yeah.
It's so true, that feeling of reciprocity, if I can say it right. Reciprocity is always, it's the way you work with partners, it's the way with everything. It's how you can help. It's not about how you can help yourself, it's how you can help other people, because it will always come back and help you. And
I think also, Paddy, as well, there's going back, referencing what Scott just said about reaching out on LinkedIn. I mean, it is it's a common platform we all use. And I mean, I'm sure we've all had it where somebody wants to connect with you, and as soon as they connect, they immediately start selling to you. And it's so unsubtle, and it's so it's a very immature way of doing things, is immediately blurting out what you're doing. And I think, Scott's absolutely right, is to, I mean, my opening line, sort of when people connect is, great to connect with you. Look forward to, to helping you. If there's anything you need in the 1, 2, 3, 4 subjects, happy to talk, and leave it at that. People don't want to know that you're desperately trying to get a sale out of them, because it's just not the right way to do it. It's not the right vehicle.
Well, especially as I heard somewhere, sort of clients getting about 50 connections a week on LinkedIn, and that's it. As Scott, it comes into the next question, which is, it's such a powerful tool, but actually with such sort of scale of connections coming through, how do you really drive that cut through? And Keith sort of alluded to it. Actually, it is about sort of helping, but how do you start building those messages, that sort of that approach to really help effectively build those relationships and not just become one of those other agencies that are just knocking the door saying sell, sell, sell?
Yeah, well, I think first point, it's what Keith does with getting your data in the right point, have a full understanding who you want to work with, why you want to work for them, all this sort of stuff. Then I think it's offering value to those people, those businesses. You can go onto your LinkedIn account now, or go onto someone else's LinkedIn account, sorry. There's a notification bell on someone's profile. Click it, you'll get a notification every time they post. So every time they post, write a comment and offer them some value. Ask open questions. Try and, I introduced someone for a job the other day, and they were like, "Oh, thanks a lot. That was really helpful." So it's just more goodwill being put out there. It's another touch point.
Absolutely.
I worked out that for most of my clients, it's between 8 and 10 touch points, quality touch points. So it might be a comment, it might be an email open, it might be responding to a DM. 8 to 10 is quite a lot. But if you just plant those out there, put the goodwill out there, you start moving along. Most of the people, they sell their proposition, when I don't believe your proposition should need to be sold. It should be clear. Go on your website, go on your landing page, go on your content. Okay, I get it, right? Rationally, you should be able to understand it, to the basic nth level. It then should be a point of intrigue, or you're intrigued and you want some more education on it. If you tell everyone everything that you do, there's no intrigue. There's no reason to go on a second date, because you've already told them everything at your first date. You said everything in your Tinder messages. There's no point for a second date. You already know everything. So there's a point as to sort of drip feed that information out, give that value out slowly, and take your time. Don't rush it. Like I don't rush any of the relationships with any people I work with. And people come to me and say, "I want to work for you." And I go, "No worries, 6 months, a year, whenever, I'm happy, I'm here." And it's because I've got lots of relationships with people, and they will come good when they come good. And if they don't come good in terms of a client, I've still got a great relationship. I've got a friend, it's that mindset, which I think people miss, because this is long-term thinking. Short-term thinking is, I need sales now. But if you planted those, Keith said before we went live, if people started 6 months or a year ago, they wouldn't be in such a rush to try and convert people, because they'd already been doing the things they should have done a year ago.
It's so true. That short-term thinking often comes through as saying their sales are dried, cash is short, their sales are dried up or something, and pipeline's not there. And they said, right, everyone just needs to hit the phone, or just get all your connections into one sort of thing and just start hounding clients. And actually, it devalues I think a lot of the agencies did this in COVID time, but it really moved them away from being that specialist, that niche, and that slightly differentiated agency into just one of the many that is trying to get in front of a client. I think it really devalued agencies in that space. One of the things that everyone's sort of moving into this world of sort of automation, but actually some of the things you see, and we talked about it already, which is you lose that personal touch with automation. And Scott, I was actually going to come to you again. In your experience, when you were working at MB Group, you really had a good one to sort of helping build the right automation, but have that right level of personalization coming through. Can you just talk a bit more about that, actually?
Yeah, so as much as I like content, creativity and being quirky and all that sort of stuff, when I started an e-commerce business, I had to learn about marketing automation, HubSpot, all that sort of stuff. At MB Group, we used Force 24, which I think are a member of Pimento. A huge advocate of those guys and what they do. But when I joined, I got given 25,000 pieces of data, and then GDPR came in and they said, "You've got to bin all this because you haven't contacted it." And I was like, okay, well, we actually need 5 clients this year in order to hit our growth goals. So maybe we need 200 pieces of data, 500 pieces of data. But like in terms of like marketing automation, if you have more reference points, more tags, so with like one of those automation systems, you might call them auxiliary fields. So the more touch points you have, so it's like, you know, they're this prospect, they're in this industry, they want this. And then through dynamic content, you can switch up. So every email is bespoke to that person or that person in this category. And also depending on how far along your nurture sequence they are, they can have, you know, a slightly more pushy close, or, you know, a more open, or whatever it might be. But it's more data points. And if you have more data points, you can be more bespoke with what you do. I think if you just you have this one list of prospects and you send them the same content, you know, it's going to struggle to feel personal, you know, high F name and off you go. It's not going to feel personal. Whereas if you get more data as you build and before you start the nurturing, it's going to feel more bespoke. And also, I think it's taking notice of the touch points along the way and the lead scoring and things like that to inform what you then do, which is why I think marketers are massively underrated with like automation systems and stuff, because it suggests that you set it up and it's done. But in reality, it's the marketers tweaking it and honing it and making sure it's moving in the right direction is where so much of the value is. But this is Keith's domain.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you know that you say that, Scott, because you know, I mean, the whole process, I think there's a lot of reliance goes on technology, and I think it you know, as much as I run a business that is data driven, and it's all about providing, you know, data to contact data and you know, sort of insights and research and stuff like that. I think there's a line beyond which, you know, I mean, a lot of agencies, a lot of people in the Pimento network, a lot of companies in the Pimento network, you know, you start saying things like lead scores and life cycles and, you know, intent marketing and stuff like that. And I think it scares people off, because ultimately what we're talking about here is a system that's adopted by Fortune 500 companies that doesn't necessarily translate to the SME agency and stuff like that. The principles are exactly, I mean, Scott's absolutely right. The principles are there, but when it comes to personalization, then of course you can't send personal things to, you know, 200, you know, different prospects and stuff like that. Absolutely you can't. So you've got to change your game, and that's where, you know, content marketing, you know, doing different things, different forms of content for you know, in order to bait the hook out there. You know, like the reason I do a podcast. The reason I do a podcast is because I don't have the time to talk to everybody I want to talk to. So this is a great method of communication for me. And it's a great way of being able to sort of talk about relevant subjects. And I think that's what gets people, you know, sort of coming to you, is that, you know, you're talking about things that they want to learn about. And then once you're there, you're off, you know, and you start to build that relationship. So, you know, there's a balance you strike. And I absolutely agree that technology does help. But I think to a certain point, and beyond that, you have to be the best judge of who is the best client, who is the best prospect, and how best to target them. And if you haven't got time to target all of them, then find something that reaches all of them, you know, that they will all have in common, and a broadcast or a white paper or a, you know, a webinar like you're doing here, Paddy. You know, absolutely, this is the way to do it.
Brilliant. Can we explore that content side of things in more detail in terms of actually, you got, so going back to you, Scott, that, so you got that, the brand sort of content, but actually how do you start to use the brand content then to narrow it down and scale it down, so you're actually starting to be much more targeted in and moving into that sales side of things in more nuanced ways?
Yeah, so with personal branding clients, I use like a 5-to-1 content ratio, 4-to-1, whatever. If you know Gary Vee, the annoying American marketer, he wrote a book called Jab, 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 Right Hook. And the concept is like give, ask, right? And I try and work out 4 to 5 pieces of value-led content, and then you get one ask. So every like 3 weeks, I say to my clients, if they've been good, they're allowed to sell in some way, but in, that's not too pushy, right? But what happens is the more value you give, so say you start here week 1 and then week 3, you get to do your ask. You've built up more traffic, more rapport, and then you get to ask. And then you do it again in another 3 weeks. But guess what? You've got more traffic, a better core audience, more awareness. So every time you do your ask, it's more effective. But if you started at point 1 and did your ask and said, oh, I'm doing this, whatever, no one will care because your audience isn't listening to you. Because all you do is sell. So there's no value. All you do is talk about your proposition. I don't think I've written a post about personal branding in the last 18 months because I don't want to, because it's quite clear as to what I do. I talk about value for other people. I talk about relationships. I talk about me as an individual. I talk about how I'm working in my business, the different challenges we're having, all those sort of things. And people can touch into that. I have a graphic on my site, which is basically you here in the middle, and you have different rings that go around you, which is context. So you want to build more layers of context around you, which someone might connect with you because, oh, you talked about some hobby which they relate to, or maybe you had some mental health challenge or something like that, something that's personal to me that has helped me build relationships with a lot of people on a personal level. There's different rings of context that people will relate to. And once you can get in those hooks into people, you connect in on some level, then when you extrapolate that out, your ask is much more effective. I'd say all of my clients are credible and successful. The thing that I help them do is be more relatable and more open. I think if you're not trying to be relatable and open, you will struggle to build relationships. And I think that is a mindset shift that people need to take, is to be more open and try to be more relatable. So if you do that, then I remember my old boss said to me, marketing doesn't work, Scott. All of my clients come from personal relationships. And I'm like, well done. Where did those personal relationships come from? Well, X, Y, and Z. Right. Okay. Well, let's go back to that first point of where that relationship originated from. It was marketing. It was meeting at the school gates. It was whatever. Well, how can we replicate that again? And it's going back to that point. And personal relationships are built from openness and relatability. And hopefully you've got credibility there as well. If you don't have credibility, it'll probably all fall over. So make sure you're credible.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to follow on from that as well, talking about, specifically, to do with things like LinkedIn, because, I mean, again, going back to the podcast, and this isn't a sell. I'm not trying to sell the podcast here, but the point is, I get to speak to lots of people who do lots of interesting things in how they win new business, and one of the experts that I spoke to was a guy called John Asperian, who's a fantastic kind of LinkedIn expert, and he kind of educated me as to the best way to behave on LinkedIn, because it is a new format for a lot of people. But echoing what Scott's just said, consistency and reliability. Okay, these rings that Scott's talking about, you build around you. Those consistency and reliability are, they're so important in an environment like LinkedIn. And a good example is if you look at my profile, okay, on my headline, right, it says new business prepper, speaker of the house, host at Field podcast, MD of the Advertist, and new business is easy as ABC. All right, so there are qualifiers there, and so everything I talk about on LinkedIn is to do with one of those subjects, right? And so people know that they can talk to me about any one of those subjects. If somebody starts engaging me about fish or bicycles or something else like that, that's not my wheelhouse. That's not what I do. So I'm not qualified. Those are the things I'm qualified to talk about. And so Scott's absolutely right, is that there's millions and millions of people on LinkedIn, and you have to be good at what you do, consistent, and an expert talking about the things that you talk about. If other conversations come on as a result of that, that's all well and good, but stick to your truth and then, work it out from there.
Brilliant. And Keith, just going on, so I'm going to wrap this. I've got a couple more questions and I'm going to open it up to the floor. There's already a couple of other questions in the chat, but so Keith, with all that's been going on, all this conversation we just had, so this 25-minute chat, where do you think agencies are missing a trick at the moment?
I think the interesting thing about missing a trick is that I think a lot of agencies, and I mean, I've had conversations of, sort of on LinkedIn about this very subject, is that I think a lot of agencies have something that they've created that they think is valuable, but it's not. All right. And we're talking, these are usually kind of unemotional things like a process, a method of being able to do this, a method of being able to evaluate your brand or to be able to position your brand. We use a scientific. Clients are not interested in that. Right. What clients are interested in is, do they think they can work with you long term? They're making an investment in you. Right. And if they can work with you, all the other things come from. Great example, Lucky Generals, right? Had an interesting conversation with two people at Lucky Generals talking about how they'd completely screwed a pitch up, right? Got it completely wrong and didn't hit the mark at all. But the client then contacted them, right? Because they wanted to work with Lucky Generals, right? Not because they got the pitch wrong, but because they'd seen all the other work. They knew they were capable of doing it. So it wasn't a big problem. So, and I think that this is fundamental to the whole thing, is that relationships are at the heart of it. So, agencies missing a trick is stop trying to accentuate a process that you think is useful, find out what it is that the clients want, and then be useful, then match that.
Scott, do you have anything to add to that?
I think it goes into a lot to the fact find, right? So like clients, my process, if someone approaches me, we have a call for half hour, 40 minutes. And I just ask them questions about their business, get to understand their business, what they're looking for. And then stage 2 would be, we'll try and map out what I do and map that next to your business. And then it'll be contextual to you. What people do is they try and sell before they have context. The sell me your pen thing. It's not about the pen. It's about, what sort of pen are you looking for? It's that which people miss. And they try and push their solution to everyone without having a core understanding of exactly what they want. And it might be that you try and sell the wrong solution. It might be you undersell yourself, or you oversell yourself, or whatever. And I've certainly done that over the last 18 months, whatever, since I started the agency, where I've sold the wrong thing. What I've learned to be better at is to keep my mouth shut, listen, ask open questions, and try and learn something, and then try and match it to what they want. But I've had conversations with lots of prospects when I've said, I don't think we align. And I think you should go and approach these people, which would be a better fit for you. But that's like self-awareness of yourself and self-awareness of your proposition and what you do, that helps you do that. So yeah,
I think that's a bigger topic, especially as it's one of the sort of areas agencies work with a lot of smaller businesses that actually are drained on their resource. But it's how do you, if you want to move away from them, but how do you do that? And actually it's that adding value. So look, we've outgrown you, sort of thing. So here's someone who could actually do what we do, but do it for you in the value that you're looking for. I think that's a hard thing for agencies to do, but that's another thing. But it all comes back to helping clients and that side of things. I'm going to bring Amy Blakemore. Do you want to ask your question? Shall I ask it for you? Where are you, Amy? Or have you? Amy, do you want to unmute? Hey, hello.
Yeah, I've just popped a question in the chat. Hi, everyone, by the way, listening intently. Just thinking about sales targets. I actually had a conversation with my managing director this morning about our targets for the rest of the year. So I'd be interested to know, when we're talking about this kind of long-term thinking, and I understand that it often takes a number of months, sometimes years, to get those high-value clients on board, perhaps. But when you have sales targets, there's obviously a bit of an added pressure when it comes to thinking about money and, what your pipeline looks like. So I'm just interested to know how everyone else might manage that stress and pressure alongside their prospecting.
It's a great question, and it's a hi Amy. Thanks for the question. But I mean, I know that Scott's obviously got something to add to this, but to me, I think there is this reflects the whole sort of process where new business fits in the organization. If new business is built into the figures to start with, if the sales targets are understanding of the fact that sort of that say the market is more long term now, it's looking more, then things have to be adjusted. If you're still trying to drive a Ferrari in a four-wheel driving condition, then it's not going to work. Everything has to adapt, and that's got to do with you speaking to the stakeholders and stuff like that, and the import that they give for new business. But again, I mean, I think you need to be able to have those conversations ongoing. If you're in a situation where you just have sales targets and there's nothing else you can do about it, you can't change those things, then you're going to have to start from somewhere. And I think having a list of prospects, finding new ways of building up your prospects in order to to get going, and then having, like I was saying earlier, about one single piece of content or a couple of things that enables you to influence more than just 5 people or whatever, I think is important. So there's a balance to strike, obviously, but I would say if you can influence the stakeholders, and so that they're aware of the conditions and adjust their figures accordingly, that's great. If not, then try and find new ways to be able to generate your audience and to put more into the the funnel that Scott was talking about at the very start of all this.
Yeah, I completely agree. To add to that, so my rationale has always been like reverse engineering where I want to get to. So say if you want £1 million of new business in 12 months time, I would work out how many clients you think it will take you to get there. Is it 3? Is it 50? How many is it? What's your average? One of the core questions I ask when I speak to a prospect is, what's your average, LTV, average order value, average lifetime value of a client, a contract, whatever. So you can then go, right, we need 20 to get to £1 million. Right, okay. So we've got to convert 20. If we're converting at 5%, we need this many people at the top of the hopper. And we need to, and it's how long do we think it's going to take someone to go from awareness to engagement to interest to your AIDA funnel or whatever you want to use, right? How long is that going to take? So one of the things that I do with clients is I work out how to get an ROI for them, so get their money back to them within the first 3 to 6 months. So this just covers the costs of working with me, but then we're working towards the big client, the big goals. So because say if you work out and you go, it's going to take me 9 months to win the business that I want to win, your boss, your whoever's managing budget or whatever, you've got to manage them as well. So you go, look, if I can get you a sprinkle of these things to keep you happy for the next 3-6 months, will you allow me to keep working on my SEO strategy or my PPC strategy or whatever it is, content, whatever you want to do? If you can get those little ones boxed off, which aren't going to be the strategic clients, they're non-strategic, but they pay the bills, they allow you to invest in your long-term vision, I think that is a sensible approach because it's pragmatic and it's long-term in your thinking. But a lot of people, they don't know how many clients, what they look like, what they need to do in order to get £1 million, 100 grand, 50 grand, whatever you need in a year's time. I think it's going back, looking at that process, but also knowing, I remember I ran a PPC campaign for 6 months, and 5 months it delivered 0 inquiries. Month 6, we got £100,000 inquiry. It's I had to make sure that my boss didn't turn off my tap, because I knew that month 6, month 7, month 8, something was going to come in that was going to be great. But I had to manage up in order to allow it not to be stifled. And the problem with people investing in marketing agencies, I think, is that they'll jump in for 3 months, 6 months. Well, we'll do 3 months and see if it works. Well, how long does the average take to win the client? 12 months. Right. So you're going to cut off a quarter of the time into it. And then you'll go, content doesn't work for me, I'm going to do SEO. I'll do that for 3 months to 6 months. But there's no plan. They're just jumping between thing to thing to thing. And then depending on their experience, they'll blame the agency, they'll blame each other, and they won't have actually made credible progress. And I think that if you can manage up, have an awareness of 12 months and work out how to win enough to pay for your leisure activities and your blue sky thinking or whatever, I think you'll be in a good place.
And
I agree. I actually agree with.
Just to draw a line to that, Amy, I mean, I would say that you know, as salespeople, and you know, I like to classify myself as a salesperson. We're all desperate. We all want, you know, we all want the business. You know, we all, and it's so tempting just to try and just to get business to fill a hole. And I think, you know, especially in this kind of climate, you know, everybody snatches. They all just want to snatch at a piece of business. And, you know, you have to be very, very careful, because you could end up snatching the wrong piece of business that takes the agency in completely the wrong direction, you know, because it becomes a needy client. And then that needy client is then only wanting one thing, one discipline, and you've blunted your agency's kind of nice shiny point. So I think, you know, make sure that all the stakeholders are invested in where the new business is pointing.
I think just backing up all of that as well, it's I remember in previous agency working, we had a new business agency supporting us, and the brief they had was completely wrong, which is we want 4 leads per month. Well, the leads you get aren't very good leads, and it just backs up. So actually, the more clear you are on that, using the data, understanding who your client is, etc., is the more valuable that your approach will be, and actually more relevant. And it negates away the negative clients that can undermine the business. Thanks. I hope that answers, Amy. Brilliant. There's another question. Another question in the chat. Sherelle, do you want to jump on as well?
Sorry, I didn't realise you were going straight in, but I was nodding away because actually I asked the question 5 minutes ago, but where we veered into actually speaks to my question, I think. So you might have partially answered it, but at the very beginning, Scott, you say to your clients, tell me 5 to 10 names that you want to work with, and quite often they can't. And your response to that is, well, if you can't tell me, how can I help you? But I guess at the end of the day, you do have to nudge them along to get to the target companies that they want to work with. So my question is, how do you do that? I mean, it's been a while since I've been at the coalface agency side, but I think every agency in Leeds where I worked probably had the same companies that they really wanted to work with, and every agency was going after the same big regional brands. And it wasn't realistic for every agency to actually be able to work with them. And, you know, there's good new business and there's bad new business. So what type of questions and nudges do you ask both Keith and Scott when you're starting to work with clients about helping them to identify what is a good new business prospect versus what you should steer away from at this time?
I think so someone gives you a list of 10 companies, 10 names. It's what they think, who they think they should be working with, right, on paper. I do so every month. As we move through, it becomes less about content and more about relationships and coaching and understanding your client. So when you get to month 6, for example, maybe you have, because you're engaging, you're commenting, you're building relationships, whatever, you have a better understanding of what you think your prospects work out at. It might be the list that 10 names you start with, you go, actually, I'm not aligned. So when I start off, I do a positioning thing where we align content pillars. So what you talk about, your business, whatever you want to talk about, with your personal values. So a lot of the time it's working out the values of yourself and as your business, aligning that to the values of your clients. So everyone says, oh, we know our values as a business and it's the mission of our business is to transform this. It doesn't really mean anything to you. If you can align yourself with your personal values with the values of the clients that you work with, you can then build that rapport. And when they come in, they'll be a great client because you're aligned on values. So like a best client for you is someone that aligns with you values first, and then logically it makes sense for you to be working together and exchanging services. I think it's a process of understanding. Like I'm a year and a bit into my agency and I'm very clear on the values of the people that I want to work with. it goes across industries, but the values are non-negotiable. And I wasn't clear on that when I started, because I wasn't through the process far enough. And I think that if you look every month, you look at, say if you had month one, you have your 10 list, and every month you look at your list and you see how it's changed, I guarantee in a year's time, your list will look very different, because you've got a better awareness of your values, the values of what your clients really care about. Maybe it's a case of speaking to your current clients as well and saying, why did you work with us? Why do you think we work so well together? Well, it's because you do this and we agree on that. And then you sort of try and replicate that again. It's not just, oh, we work with technology businesses, so we'll just do more of that. Like, it's too simplified. And I think that, you know, a lot of the clients that work with me, they work with me because they align with me. A lot of people don't, because they don't align with me. And I think that when you get to that point, you can be quite comfortable, because it's personal, I think.
I think just to add to that as well, Sherelle, is that it's very tempting. Every agency that exists loves to put Microsoft or Coca-Cola or whatever on their their sort of portfolio page and stuff like that. And I think that one of the advantages that I've found in working with so many different kind of new business people and new business agencies and stuff like that is that the real value from what they do comes in a knowledge of the market. So say, for example, you said, okay, you just referenced Coca-Cola. That's fine. That's great. All right. And an agency comes to you, or a client comes to you and says, or your boss says, we want to work with Coca-Cola. It's like, okay, Coca-Cola, that's good, but so does everybody. All right. But in the soft drinks market, it's going crazy at the moment. There's a lot of kind of new challenges coming into the market. There's a lot of different sort of new, freshly funded startups looking at, sort of planet-friendly ingredients, or looking at non-alcoholic beverages or low alcoholic beverages and stuff like that are coming into the market. Why don't we start looking at some of those where the market is less focused? And a lot of these startups, and this is one of the things that we have in the Adventist, is we make a big play about mergers and acquisitions and freshly funded companies and things like that, that we list them out, because these companies come to the market with 5, 10, $15 million or pounds worth of funding, and very little into in terms of sort of marketing capability. And that's where sort of agencies can win out, is that they come on at a very early stage with the agency, build a relation, or with the company, build a relationship, and then take it on from there. So I would say, don't look at Coca-Cola because everybody's looking there. Look over in the other areas, dig deep, do some research into the market, find out what the new challenger brands, challenger companies are in any sector, and you'll find gold in them thar hills.
I'm going to back all that up, and actually there's new regulation coming out on HFSS, or high fat, sugar, salt content, in October this year. And actually the expectation is the market's going to get darker and darker and darker, which is going to make it harder and harder and harder. It's going to follow the cigarette, and potentially alcohol is going to follow that same trend. So it's, how can you actually add value? Think about actually what the future looks like, and what marketing and role of advertising is going to be in the future in those worlds. The other thing is actually with Coca-Cola, what's their procurement process? Because some of those procurement processes I've worked on, when you're working in a network agency, you've got to jump through so many hoops, and actually, can your agency take that? And actually, is it worth that?
To add to that, it's like, you've got to go, if you want £1 million contract, you've got to jump through all those hoops. It's an RFI tender process. You've got to waste all this time. You've got to go to all these meetings, all these whatever. Whereas you work with a challenger brand, and they go, I like you, you like me, let's start working together. And it might be that if you work with that challenger brand, do a good job, you can then go to Coca-Cola and go, look, we work with whoever, makes sense. Can we sort of move up this tender process a bit? Do we have to jump through all the hoops? I don't want to waste my time. And that's the thing which is really frustrating in marketing, is that, for new business, it's really frustrating going through long extended tender processes, and you end up feeling like you spend 3 months working on a £1 million contract and you don't get it, and you just feel like you've wasted your time sometimes. And it's
It's working out all those. And Amy, thank you, Cheryl. I hope that answered your question, by the way.
Did. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Amy, I'm not going to bring you in, but DM, yes, anything through the post, I think at this moment is a way to cut through, because clients are doing, most of them are three days a week in the office, apart from next week when there is the train strike. But something that is tactile and it sits on their desk is going to work, as long as it's creative and sticks to your proposition and why you're doing it.
Absolutely. I mean, think about what your mission is and does whatever it is. I mean, I'm a great believer in DM. I mean, it was, that's what I grew up with. But obviously, we live in a different world now, don't we, Amy? Because people are working from home. So I mean, you obviously have to be careful you don't send stuff to their house, or you don't start asking them for their physical mailing address. But so again, a balance, and something digital might work better. But if you're going to send something physical, then it has to kind of it has to be on brand, and it has to reflect your proposition. So that it has to resonate with them and be memorable, and that could sit on their desk for a year.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. We've got about 7 minutes left, so I've got one last question, then I've just got to wrap up a few things. But is there, Scott, I'm going to start with you, one tip that agencies should really focus on to help nurture and build these relationships?
I would say as a marker for what you should aim at. So if you want 5 clients, 10 clients, X amount of revenue, ask yourself how many quality relationships you have with those businesses. Grade them 1 to 10. Okay, I know Scott. What would I grade my relationship with Scott out of 10? Mark those up, put them on a board and go, here's what I would grade the relationships with people in those businesses at. And then think, well, what can I do to add value to them? That's where I would start, and then move forward from there, because people, they quantify it with number of leads, revenue, number of clients, whereas reality, in order to get to all those places, you need X amount of relationships, and you need X amount of 7s and above. You need 100, 200, 2 out of 10s. You need to move those through, but have an awareness of the quality of your relationships. And I think that it's no wonder why people with better networks do better in business, but it's because they spend more time building relationships with people, and then it's a logical decision to work with you, not an emotional decision, because they've already done the emotional bit.
Yeah, I would completely echo that, Scott, as well. And I would say that the thing to focus on now, especially given the way the economy is at the moment, is building long-term sustainable kind of business relationships. And you can do that either in-house. I mean, you can work with external agencies who can work like the way Scott does, almost like a water pressure valve that's able to control and throttle the amount of work, so you're not overworked, you're not over servicing, or you're not stretched trying to service all the new businesses coming in. And make sure that you find ways to engage with them personally. So, whatever that happens to be. So whether that's, white papers or podcasting or, webinars, things like that, that give you stand out, allow you to talk one to many, and with a single message, a single voice. And I think, don't take your foot off the gas. Just keep going with new business, because it's very hard to build up, exactly as we started this whole webinar, is that it's very, very hard to build up that inertia once you've lost it. So just keep running with it. And that's just regular. Be disciplined in your new business and do it regularly.
Just to add to that, something's come up. The source of new business for most businesses, number one, is referrals, right? Existing clients referring you. And that's because you've got the best relationships with them. You've worked with them, you've proved concept, you've got a good relationship. They then feel comfortable to refer you. I say to all of my clients, don't refer me until I've got an ROI for you. Once I've got an ROI for you, feel free to refer me. Because I know that when you refer me, I'm probably going to work with that person. Because I've done the thing that you wanted me to do. It's just, can I do it for them as well, right? I don't want referrals until I've done the work. right? And I think that you look at Pimento, the reason it works is because people refer each other, but people refer each other because they have relationships. You've all built relationships with each other and spent the time to understand each other's businesses and support each other. That's why the referrals mean so much, because the relationship and the rapport is there. If you didn't know each other or had no respect for each other and what each other does, the referral wouldn't mean that much. And I think that that's the important thing. If we can just treat referrals as business, is how business works, right?
Brilliant. Keith, Scott, thank you so much. It's been a really fascinating, engaging session. So thank you. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you want to get Scott or Keith's emails or get in contact, come through me and I'll be able to pass that forward on to and make the introductions. Just a couple of other things. We've got the next BD Club is on the 7th of September, which is going to be talking all of the things about pitching. And we've also got an event next month on the 6th of July, I believe, which is actually very personally going to be talking about the recession. And it's how we've got industry experts talking about brands and how brands and agencies can protect themselves against a recession. So there'll be comms coming out from that in the future. There's also a reminder to book your ticket to the Independent Agencies Conference, which before the end of this month, because we have an early bird saving going on at the moment. So do take advantage of that. The conference themes are people and purpose equals performance. And the event has been produced by Pimento, the Alliance of Independent Agencies, and Agencynomics. A few of the outstanding presenters we've got and speakers we've got you can look forward to are you've got Suki Thompson, James Murphy, Rankin, Rohit Talwar, who is a global futurist, award-winning keynote speaker, and is the author and CEO of Fast Future. And it's all been hosted by Lucrezia Millarini. In the chat is the actually link to the conference because there's more speakers on there. But please do register. I think it's going to be a fascinating and insightful session as well.
Brilliant.
So it's taking place on the 22nd of September. And then all I can say is thank you both Scott and Keith, and thank you all for attending, and have a really nice rest of the day and rest of the week.
You too. Thank you, Paddy.
Thanks
Cheers,
for having
guys.
me.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.